Namaste, I'm Dhruvika, design team member at Craft Angles. Today I have lined up the mermaid themed cards for you. So let's begin making these cards. For the first card, I'm using the Mermaid Kisses stamp set, which is a 4x4 photopolymer stamp set, and I've cut a 4x5 inches panel from the dual texture cardstock. I'll be using a lot of blending brushes along with the 6 shades of distress ink. To begin with, I'm going to deboss this particular panel using one of the Mermaid Scales debossing die. So once it is ready, I'm going to do a lot of ink blending. I'm starting with the picked raspberry, gently brushing in inside, and then I'm also going to blend in some dried marigold. This is going to give me a beautiful blend. It's going to be very smooth and very less spikes in it. Then I'm also going to go in gently using the squeeze laminate evergreen burrow. Evergreen burrow I'm using because I want to give a very beautiful pastel look in the card. If you see, I've left some space for the yellow there so that later on I can blend in both the yellow with the orange and with the shade of green. Now I go in again with the dried marigold to give it a blended look. For the blue, I'm going in with some tumbled blue, which is really good when it comes to blending with the evergreen burrow. And in the end, I'm using the violet. It's the shaded lilac color here in this case because I want to make it really pastel. Now I'm going once again with the tumbled glass evergreen burrow, and then it's ready. Now to begin with stamping, I'm going to take out one of the mermaids which is sitting on the shell, and I'm going to stamp it using the Tubbycraft jet black dye ink pad. I'm also going to use the little fish there and a little shell. I think that'll be very nice if I use it as a filler. I shall now make a slit which will be measuring 3 inches long, and I shall be cutting it using my paper cutter. So I am just measuring that this moment sits well where exactly I want to position when it's in the closed position. So I cut it twice using my paper cutter knife, and then to bring out all the little paper pieces from the nook and crannies, I mark it again. And then I shall use my scissors to cut it evenly so that the mechanism is smooth and works well. So once it is done, I did not know when my camera stopped working, and that is when the little sleeve or the spine on which my mermaid shall be sitting could not be recorded. But nonetheless, I have just made a little spine which moves through the slit, and now I'm making a little mechanism which blocks the free movement of the spine so that it doesn't come off the card. So it's a small half an inch slit, and which I've used. And now if you see, I've pasted everything with my liquid adhesive. I'm using the glossy accent here because I think it's a stronger adhesive. Now I'm sticking the little fish that I made and the clam shell that I'm going to put onto the pull tab, because I think that automatically draws attention and the user knows how to open and close it. Now finally, to complete the look, I am sticking the whole panel using the 3D foam tape onto the 4.25 by 5.5 quarter inches of panel, which I've again used from the dual texture 230 GSM cardstock by Craft Angles. Once it is done, I place it there and tada, my card is ready. My mermaid begins to move up and down. For my next card, I'm using the same stamp set, which is called the Mermaid Kisses, but I'm using two stencils. One is the waves and the other is the rays. I've cut a panel which measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches from the same dual textured cardstock by Craft Angles. I'm just using a little mask to differentiate between the upper layer and the lower layer of the underwater scene that we're going to create. I'm also using a number of different shades of blue from the Distress ink, starting with the Tumbled Glass, wherein it is going to be the lightest blue here, depicting the different rays coming in from the top of the water. Now I shall be blending in some Salty Ocean Distress ink. And then moving forward, I will be using the Stormy Sky and the Chipped Sapphire. I'm going to make the blending very smooth. However, it should be able to differentiate the different layers and the penetration of the sun rays. You see, I have gently blended in some Salty Ocean. That's a beautiful blue out here. And then I'm moving in with some Stormy Sky gently onto the corners, because the corners are the ones which look perfect there. Gently blending in some Chipped Sapphire. I'm a little sped up because now you know how I'll be blending it in. With that, I'm also going to blend in some black dye ink to give it more depth out there. Next, I bring in the Rays stencil by Craft Angles. It's a beautiful stencil which can be used for both the day scenes, underwater scenes, and anything. It can be used as a focus light as well, but then I decided to use it as a focus beam of the sun rays that penetrate through underwater. And now very gently I am brushing in some white pigment ink by Hero Arts. Now if you see, the edges are a little sharp and edgy. That is why I blend in again with some blue Distress ink, whichever was there in my brush. But now I'm also using some Chipped Sapphire to add in some depth. Now that was the upper portion. To make the lower portion, I am just inverting the whole thing and brushing in with what was left on my brush. But I'm going to use the same shades because it is finally going to be the same blue that moves in, except for the amount of light that we want to have in the lower part of the underwater scene. Now again, gently brushing in with some Tumbled Glass, I bring in some ocean blue and then blending very smoothly, gently we move ahead. I'm quite more or less satisfied. Now it is time for stamping. I'm going to use the other mermaid, color it, fussy cut it, and then pasting it with the glossy accent. I think it's a strong adhesive which sticks very beautifully. So I've used a yellow colored mermaid, which is a complete contrast with what is there in the water. So if you see now, you know why I have made a pot-like structure, to give it a beautiful look. Now under the mermaid, I'm going to use this stencil which is called the waves, and I'm going to brush it some white pigment ink under the mermaid, and then gently softening the edges with the blue. But if you see the kind of texture it gives. On the top it's a rays, and under the mermaid it is the waves. Now I'll stamp the sentiments again from the same stamp set which says make a splash. I'm going to use the tubby dye ink in jet black to stamp my sentiments. I want to keep it a little simple because I want to make it a CAS, which is clean and simple card making. However, I want to have a saturated background. But I'm now using the little bubbles which I'm stamping using the white pigment ink, some little bubbles here and there, few overlapping each other, and yes, it's done. So now I'll stick it onto a panel of 4 by 5 inches, and yes, it is done. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel at Craft Angles on YouTube. See you then. Happy crafting!